Hello, good evening, Chuempala. Good evening, Zambia. My name is Elias Munshya, and we are coming to you live on TV Bakwetu. Thank you very much for joining us. We are going to give you a few moments to spread the word around that in our broadcast tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Munshya and Chipakupaku from Scotland as my co-host, and we are hosting Prince Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika coming to us from Zambia. And so we look forward to our discussion today. As is customary, we are going to let you spread the word around. And once we feel that we are very comfortable where we are with numbers, we are going to bring both my co-host and my guest tonight. Again, this is TV Bakwetu. Please do the right thing. When you're spreading word around, let everybody know that we have Prince Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika tonight. It's going to be good, it's going to be great, and we are going to invite feedback from our audience. If you have a question for him, please do so. I do have several questions for him, and so we're going to have a great time, okay? Spread the word around. I think we are on Facebook as well as YouTube, and so we are coming live. Okay, so spread the word around, and it's very simple to spread the word around. You just click share and share it with as many groups, with as many groups and pages and everything else. Okay, please do so. I'm going to read his short bio now. This is a short bio. If you are to look into Honorable Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika's profile, it's a lot longer than what I'm going to read today. All right. Okay, I'm going to bring, first of all, Mr. Munshya and Chipakupaku. Mr. Chipakupaku, welcome.
Good evening, Chuempala, and good evening, Zambia.
All right, so we have a very exciting guest today, and I hope we are going to do some justice, isn't it?
Well, I've dressed properly today because he's my prince. And not only a prince, but he's also my very close cousin. So I had to give him the respect he deserves. I'm dressed like a proper gentleman tonight. So we'll give him some good time. And Aka and I have talked a lot. We've clashed over politics. We've had dinner together. We've mourned together. We've done everything. So we are going to ask him a lot of questions tonight.
Now, I can see that you are very well dressed, but I'm not very well dressed. Does it mean that I'm not dressed properly to speak with your prince?
No, you are properly dressed. After all, we know that you got one of our daughters, so that's fine. That's okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Maybe she's watching right now. If she's watching, hi. All right. Okay, we're going to get started here. I'm going to introduce Honorable Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. Welcome to our program, Honorable.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
I'm going to read your bio so that I can introduce you to our audience. In the economic development, Honorable Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika served as Managing Director of the Tanzania-Zambia Railway Authority from 2010 to 2013. From 1975 to 1986, he served in the Zambian public sector for 12 years as a subsidiary general manager, group controller of group management services, and group director of projects of the Industrial Development Corporation. In the private sector, from 1987 to 1990, he served as general manager of the multinational corporation Blackwood Hodge before initiating the campaign against the one-party state in the context of the Second Liberation of Africa. Academically, he holds the 3 master's degrees from Boston, Carleton, and Cornell universities, as well as a Bachelor of Arts degree from Jackson State University. He is a fellow of the Economic Development Institute of the World Bank. He holds a certificate in Science and Technology Innovation Program from the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, a certificate in Management Accounting from International Labor Organization, and a certificate, United Nations Institute for Public Enterprise. He's been awarded a Doctor of Philosophy. In 1981, our guest today was one of the formulators of the African Alternative Framework to Structural Adjustment Program for Socio-Economic Recovery and Transformation of the Professor Adebayo Adedeji-led UN Economic Commission for Africa. He has authored several books and articles on political economy, political development, history, and literature. His latest publications are King Lewanika First of Barotseland. He has also written on Barotse People's Story, Land and Culture. He has written books such as Milk in the Basket, The Political Economic Malaise in Zambia. He has written The Hour Has Come, Proceedings of the National Conference on Multi-Party Opinions, and the Mulungusha Experience 2005 MMD 5th National Convention. For the last 6 years to date, he, together with his siblings, has been engaged in provision of the community service and social welfare undertaking with Mukola Memorial Trust, including initiation of the Barotse National Library, documentary and research services. Currently, Honorable Mbikusita-Lewanika is the lead consultant undertaking the inventory and documentation of traditional management practices and governance systems and management plan in broader ecosystem of the Barotse floodplain for Worldwide Fund for Nature and the National Heritage Conservation Commission. Honorable Akashambatwa, this was a very long introduction.
Yes, thank you very much. It was long enough, more than long enough. We can now kick off. I think the ball might as well be thrown into the field now.
But you missed from this introduction, we don't have your political history. Was it deliberate? You don't want to talk about your Chiluba years?
Well, let's say that I can quickly say that in terms of politics, it starts from my student days. I was vice president of the Pan-African Students Association of the Americas, and then president of the African Students Association at Cornell. I was a participant, a committee member of the Southern African Liberation Support Movement as a student. When I came back, I spent about 12 or 15 years working as Indico before resigning to embark on a mission to transform Zambia from a one-party state to multi-party democracy. That started while I was chairman of the Economics Association of Zambia for 3 consecutive years, from 87 to 1990, after which we the movement for multi-party democracy was established and the campaign to return the movement for multi-party. I was the first, the founder, field organizer of that, and also the founder, national secretary of that. And then I became chairman of the Economic and Financial Committee of MMD before becoming a Minister of Science and Technology and Vocational Training. I only served as minister for 9 months before I resigned. I have served both on the ruling party front benches, the ruling party back benches, and the opposition party benches in the Parliament of Zambia. And I also did run for president in 1996 on the ticket of Agenda for Zambia. I'm also one of the founders of the National Party after we resigned from MMD to try and re-establish the purpose for which we had advocated for a return to multi-party democracy. I also served as special assistant to the President Rupia Banda for about a year before I went on to be managing director of Tazara. I also did serve as a member of the Anti-Corruption Commission under the presidency of Levi Mwanawasa.
That's very extensive experience that you have. I just want to perhaps go back to your experience during the 89s and the 90s in the fight for democracy. Now, of course, success has several authors, right? What exactly was your role in the MMD campaign for return back to multipartism?
I'm glad you asked that question, Munshya.
I was asking that question is difficult to have, because the purpose, our purpose in starting a political movement, is to start something in which as many people as possible buy into it, so that it's ours together. One of my greatest political concerns and mission is to end this one-man attribution of credit for political movement. So although I know that if there are 50 people who started MMD, I'm one of them. If there are 10, I'm one of them. If there are 5, I'm one of them. If there's only one of them, I'm the one. Because nobody joined MMD except those who were recruited by myself, or were recruited by those whom I recruited, or who joined after we had launched that. But the important thing is that we did not found MMD so that Aka will be president or get credit for it. We founded MMD as a vehicle, a gift to Zambia, as a vehicle to get back the train of political development in Zambia to a multi-party democracy with all the implication in it. So that most of the time when I talk about that, I want, and it's quite rightly so, want to ensure that everybody's clear that it was a collective effort. Of course, there may be someone who kicks the ball, but you can't win a World Cup because you are the one who kicked the ball when it was first put at the center point. So that is very, very important. In terms of activities, I was involved, as I say, as soon as I became chairman of the Economics Association of Zambia, we created it into a platform, one of the few platforms where there was really free debates on the economic issue. As you know, in 1986, there were food riots on the Copper Belt and in Lusaka over prices. So the issues of economic structure adjustment were actually very political. And we made the Economic Association a place where people could come and discuss those. Fortunately, in those days, unlike in these days, professional organization can meet without any foreign donors. We just had to ask a hotel to give us a room and allow them to open a cash bar and allow us to meet. We didn't need money, and we didn't pay per diems for those who came to speak. And so for 3 years, basically, we did that. Then in that purpose also, we now started linking up with other economic actors. I should say that before 1987, I was general manager first of Zambia Ceramics Limited from 1984 to 86. Then
so that was a parastatal, am I correct? Was that a parastatal?
That was a parastatal, an Indico subsidiary. Yeah. Then after that, I left the parastatal to join the private sector to be general manager of Blackwood Lodge for 3 years. So I was chairman of the Economics Association from my seat as a general manager. And while I was in that position, I also was very involved as a resource person at trade union workshops, at workshops of the chambers of commerce, at workshops of the cooperative unions, and workshops of the small-scale industrialists. In a sense, I should say that by that time, I had gone back to school, to Boston University, to get my third master's degree, where I was really reviewing what I'd done as director of projects at Indico, the projects we had done, because I'd realized that they were not meeting the objectives that we had. Projects such as Mansa batteries, Chipata bicycles, intravenous fluids in Kabwe and so on. In every province, there are some. So when I went back to school, I was studying the impact of that. And the product of that study was a book called Milk in the Basket, which identified the problem, the nature of our economy and its problems, and then identified that we could not solve those economic problems outside the political sphere. So that the conclusion was that we needed to address the economic issues, but also to liberalize the political space so that people can have a political channel in which they can discuss the political issues.
All right, thank you. So I just have one follow-up question. When you mentioned your book, is it readily available for people to purchase? I honestly went to Amazon.com to try and look for your books.
It used to be there. We have to republish it because it was published in 1990. And almost prophetically, what I did is that after the first convention of MMD, I gave each member of the National Executive Committee a copy of my book. And I half jokingly told them that you have to read this book so that if in future we differ, you understand that it's not personal. It's over very fundamental issues of the purpose for fighting for multi-party democracy in terms of its economic regime as well as its political regime.
Before you proceed, Munshya, I think for the sake of young people who were born after 1991, there's a lot of influence from your parents, Prince, on trade unionism. Can you tell the Zambians who was your father?
My father was Mbikusita-Lewanika, a son of King Lewanika I. He was in 1928 at the age of 24. He was the founder secretary of the first urban welfare association, African Welfare Association in Livingstone. Of course, the first welfare association was founded in 1924 in Mwenso under the chairmanship of Mr. Donald Swale. But the first urban one was in Livingstone. And at the age of 24, he became one of the leaders as a founder secretary. Then in 1933, they tried to form the African National Congress. They were at Kafue, they were blocked. But in 1941, he went to Kitwe and then became a community leader there. In 1944, he was president of the Kitwe African Society, which was another welfare society. And it's the Kitwe African Society that suggested that all the welfare societies should unite and constitute a Federation of Northern Rhodesia African Society, which was done in 1946 with Mr. Yamba, Daut Yamba, as president. Then in 1948, it was resolved that this National Federation of Welfare Association should reconstitute itself into an openly political organization, the Northern Rhodesia African Congress. And my father was the founder president general of that. He served 3 terms. The terms were 1 year each, from 1948, 49, 50 until 1951, when Mr. Harry Nkumbula took over from him. In a sense, he's the founder president of the first political organization in Zambia. And I'm glad you've asked that question because you see, someone was saying each time I talk, I refer to my father. That's why maybe I didn't. But what's important is that I have to do that because you can imagine in a country like Zambia that the founder president general of the first political party, and I could say even more, he's the one who sent Mr. Kapwepwe to India for education and opened up scholarships for the Spalos, the Mundias, about 3 or 4 of our first cabinet ministers. He also facilitated for Mr. Munalula Skatana and Mr. Mainza Chona for their hosting while they were doing their law degrees in London. He was very, very active in scholarship.
I asked that question.
He asked for scholarships.
I asked that question, Honorable, and my friend Munshya, because there's the history of Zambia right there. And for the young people who don't know where our country came from, I deliberately asked that question. And before I hand over to Munshya, I would like to ask you one question, which is also very clear. What was Indico? What was Findico?
Indico was the Industrial Development Corporation. In the end, I'm sure Elias knows that legally it changed its name to Indico. So Indico actually became its business name. There had been an Industrial Development Corporation before independence, but its mission was to facilitate for European settlers to come to Northern Rhodesia and be set up in businesses. But after independence, it was obviously turned over and retransformed into an agent for industrialization, because the political economy we inherited from colonial Northern Rhodesia was a private sector one, it was a European-dominated one, and it was built around copper. It had the characteristics that in my book, Milk in the Basket, I emphasize. It had three characteristics. One, it was dependent for machinery and skilled labor on external people. It was also had the effect of undermining our own natural, traditional, self-reliant economic systems in the rural areas. Thirdly, it had minimal linkages with the rest of the economy. It was disarticulated. So it was an economy that was dependent, grossly dependent, externally dependent. It was grossly disarticulated and delinked from almost all the other activities in the economy. And it had a very long-term effect of undermining our traditional self-reliant traditional economy in the rural areas. And unfortunately, so that when we became independent, it was necessary to address this issue. Unfortunately, before independence and immediately after independence, we found ourselves in the hands of the World Bank. So the World Bank sent a Dr. Sears, Professor Sears.
Okay, so when you are...
Who then provided the interim development plan, which unfortunately was based on an import substitution basis, which is the basis with which, even when Indico came in, was the model we were using to industrialize. So when we form, whether it's Livingston Motor Assembly, whether it's Mansa batteries, whether it's bicycles, basically, fundamentally, we were focusing on import substitution.
All right. Now, when you mention Indico, and now we have a new model, I don't know whether it's how new it is, but the model that is being used currently under the current president, under the current government, which is the IDC. How does Indico differ with IDC, in your opinion? Do you see any differences?
There's fundamental differences because Indico was investing in production. IDC is trying to cream whatever it can cream from the top. So it's parasitical. It's just a parasite put on top of producers.
Now, do you think that this government has been consultative enough to go into all this history, your rich history, in coming up with all these models?
No, not only this government. As I said, that we went into independence with certain economic challenges of how to transform an economy of those three characteristics I had. So from the very beginning, that was an attempt. Apart from the Indico model of import substitution, there was also from 1968 to 70 nationalization of the mines, and some of the other industrial setup as a shortcut of how to bring in Africans, because we had no private sector Africans to take it over. So now, unfortunately, the process of nationalization And now with South Africa and the debate there over white monopoly capital, it's understood quite clearly, is that we nationalized with compensation plus, in the case of mines, giving them the management contract, which means that we committed ourselves to pay for what basically was ours. Then we gave them the right to manage it, which means that whether it's producing or being profitable or not, they get paid.
Okay.
Then 10, 20 years later, the economy collapses. Then we now swing the pendulum the other way and privatize, and I privatized badly. In fact, one of my reasons for resigning was over the insensitive privatization.
All right.
Now, when we privatize, we give back the mines to the same global economic forces from whom we had nationalized.
Okay.
So in the end, both nationalization and privatization does not address that fundamental structure and systematic fault line of having an economy which is externally dependent, an economy which is centered on the urban area and has the effect of undermining our traditional company, an economy which is has not fully linked to the other economic activities.
Okay.
So that it's not just this government.
All right. Now,
So
this is 2021. At least we do have this government. At least we do have this government, Honorable Aka. What should we do?
I think that understanding our historical mission is very, very important. So that when we propose solutions, they should be linked to our historical mission, which is to develop and industrialize an economy of our own in which we are in charge, in which is inclusive and which is broadly involving everybody. And one of the problems with the colonial economy is that it's a top-down economy, and it neglects the roots of our people's social in the villages. So up to date, we are not focusing our economic development to the village level. We think that foreign investors will solve our problems, but they come into this same problem system, and they come into the urban areas. They come into easily profitable areas. They are not required to maximize the inputs, local inputs. They are not required to maximize the labor. They are not required to maximize the facilitation of increasing production by our own people in the villages where they live.
All right.
And we are sending signals to our people that
Now, with your vast, just a minute, Mr. Chipakupaku. Now, with your vast experience, I just want simple answers as far as the economy is concerned.
There are no simple answers. That is our problem. We have spent 60 years looking for simple answers. And we have tried all the simple answers. We've tried nationalization, we've tried privatization, we've tried to change our laws to attract investors. All those are frivolous things. They are not addressing the root problem, which is
Can I come in? Can I come in? Can I come in, Honorable? Can I come in, Musha?
No, let him first of all answer this. What would he do differently? Okay, we have all the time. You tell us, instead of all these small solutions.
What I'm saying, I'm sorry to use that word, but what I'm saying is that if you look at our copper mines, for instance, we used to produce coppers before Europeans, but it was for bracelets and a little bit for money exchange. We did not need an open pit mine. Now, the investment into those mines was to answer the dictates of outside economies. The electricity company, which was developing, the war industry, which was developing after the 30s, and the motor industry in Detroit and so on. So that we are what we used to call that we are investing in producing what we don't consume and allowing ourselves to be able to consume what we don't produce. And then the same people whom we sell our copper to are also the same people who sell us what we consume. And the exchange of that means that our resources are being sold cheaply, their production which we consume are being sold highly, which means that every round we are losing out. But meanwhile, all these things is taking place only in the urban economy. Meanwhile, we are not addressing the food situation, the use of land and natural resources by our own people. In fact, we are even sending signals that in order for development to come, you have to give up your land. In order for development to come, you have to leave your village and go and get a job elsewhere. In order for development, so that we have to reassess that genuine development is self-determined and is self-development, and it does not come in exchange with land. Because if you give someone, sell somebody a piece of land, whatever development they put on the land that you have sold to them is their development, it's not yours. And in our own country, it's not enough for us to say somebody has brought development for us to be employees and security guards. Yeah? The development that's ours means that we have to be stakeholder, and we must realize very clearly that there is nothing you can put on any piece of land which is more valuable than the land upon which it is put. So if our contribution to whatever industrialization mining comes in is land, at a very minimum, in every one of those enterprises, the country should start with having 50% shareholding.
Okay.
The country as a whole. So otherwise you are
if I'm hearing you very well,
you sell your land, but
if I can
you sell your land for consumable money.
Okay, so you're talking of land. You're talking of 50% ownership, 50% ownership of companies, 50% ownership of what?
Whatever is put on your land, you cannot accept any share of it that is less than 50%.
Okay.
And even that is transitory. After that person who has brought that development has been paid off, ultimately future generation must own that development.
Okay, Mr.
Munshya,
then you
I'm
have
glad that Aka brought that. For our viewers, in 1968 we had the economic reforms. We nationalized the assets of Zambia. We then privatized, and privatization started with the structural adjustment program, which was before MMD. So basically, we have come full circle. So what went wrong?
Yes, we have, because of what Elias is asking us to find a simple answer. There are no simple answers.
Just give me a second. We need to deal with the sound thing here. Yeah. Now, there is some feedback we are receiving. I'm trying to figure out where it is coming from. Honorable Aka, are you using two devices or what?
I'm using a laptop and my phone is off.
Okay, and there is there's a feedback. Do you have a television on or something?
I'm actually upstairs. Whatever else is there is downstairs.
Okay, I'm not sure what it is, but we've got a feedback, and I hope we're better off now.
Okay, so when I muted Honorable Aka, the feedback went. So there was no feedback, which means there could be another device on somewhere.
So I would suggest you mute him, and you only bring him on when he needs to answer back.
All right. Okay. So what is he supposed to be answering? He's supposed to be answering your question, General.
My question is, we went through the material reforms of 1968. We then privatized. due to the structural adjustment program, which was the World Bank. And I keep on telling a lot of young people to say the privatization was not one person, it was a process through the World Bank. And now we are going back again to nationalization. Where did we go wrong?
Because you are, in other words, you are maintaining the same economic system, which is based on being dependent, which is based on neglecting our rural areas and our masses of our people, and which is based on the line of rail or the more urbanized area. So that in itself, it does not, in other words, the lesson from our history is that as long as you maintain that structure of an economy, whether you privatize or nationalize, you're operating the same economic system. Whether your oppressor is white or black, you are still being oppressed. That is the lesson of our history. So that then the other aspect of it is that we have to really critique the nationalization itself, which I had begun to say. That you say you are nationalized. And when they were announcing, the president went on a phone in Matero. His greatest statement is that now Zambia is ours because we have nationalized. Now, but this Zambian economy, which we declared to be ours in 1968 and 67 and 69, was based on allowing those who owned it to be paid compensation. It was allowing them to have management contracts, which means they continue to basically manage the mines the same way they were managing it before, except that this time they can get paid whether the mines produces or does not produce. Then we think that if you Zambianize, starting with the position of African personnel manager, you have a black managing director, but you are running the same system. Then in 1997, I know you intimidated Elias by saying you started being a soldier in 1972, but that coincides with the time when our copper prices went down, and also our imports bill went up, particularly the oil-based one. Yes, that exposed that even what we thought was development immediately after independence was built on shaky grounds, which is dependent on forces we do not control.
All right.
So that from 1973 up to 1990s, Zambian economy actually went on a straight line of economic regression. It was difficult to actually, it did not become obvious immediately because we still continue to build a few industries up to the middle 70s. But the industries we are building were as dependent on Forex as the products we were substituting them with. So that, as I say, that when we set up Mansa batteries, we start importing little pieces of a battery and assemble them in Mansa. But if you depend on foreign exchange, it's cheaper to import a full battery. In Livingstone, we import 10, 20, 30 pieces of a car, assemble them in Livingstone, but it's cheaper to import a Fiat. Now, the benefits that are supposed to be there, such as employment, for instance, when we look at the numbers, the number of people we're employing were very, very few. And one of the reasons I went back to school, which led to the book Milk in the Basket, was that after we commissioned Mansa batteries, because the political leadership in its wisdom, which was quite understandable, said you must spread out industries. In other words, that problem of disarticulation, you have a simplistic answer that, okay, let's set up Mansa battery. Instead of setting it up in Kabwe, set it in Mansa. But after we commissioned it, we of course, as professionals, we had to justify. We are going to Mansa, there is manganese, we will take employment to the rural areas, we will take development to the rural areas. But after we finished, we found that even employment, the majority of workers at Mansa batteries had come from Lusaka or Kitwe. The same in Chipata, which means that even the simplistic thing of saying you shift the same industry operating under the same economic system, even if you shift it from Kawe to Mansa, you are still operating under the same system, which is dependent on foreign exchange and which is on shaky ground.
All right.
And this is why, and then unfortunately, yes, you said the structure adjustment was from the World Bank. That's correct. But as I say, even our initial interim development plan, the first development plan led by Professor Sears, were also from the World Bank. They are the ones who advised us over import substitution.
All right.
And it did not work.
Honorable
and then they advised us over structure adjustment.
Honorable Akashambatwa, you then had the chance with your MMD colleagues in 1991-92 to make some changes. What went wrong? What happened?
Yeah, you see, I don't want to divide us as Zambians, because even when Keke was ruling, he was being cheered by Zambians. You understand? Okay. When Chiluba came, he was being cheered by Zambia. So you see, we will be misguiding ourselves if we want to lump problems in that category. As he has said, the general has said, that the structure adjustment from 1960, in May 1984, the Zambian government made a decision to disengage from the World Bank and the IMF and to stop paying this unpayable debt. But that resistance only lasted for 10 to 9 months to 12 months. Then we went back. So by the end of 1988, under UNIP, we had gone back to the World Bank and the IMF, and they were already pushing for structure adjustment program. They were already pushing for liberalization. And in fact, by 1990, UNIP itself was quite serious in considering options for liberalizing the economy, except that given their history as socialists, the verbalization of it was not quite clear. Then when we came with Mr. Chiluba, and again, you must understand that MMD was an alliance of different forces. Some of us were not capitalists at all. Okay. Now, unfortunately, those who were capitalists, who were brainwashed by the West, had more power in MMD. And they now told the IMF that those who left were even hesitating to privatize. We are going to go head on. Then my friend Penza even made a statement that our mines are so damn worthless that it's even cheaper to pay people to get there. So that attitude of total surrender to imperialist forces is the attitude that some of us resisted, because we were critical of some of the things we were critical about UNIP. Actually was when UNIP was moving towards liberalization. That is what caused the food riots. You understand? So that there was a continuation. The only thing is that after MMD,
we need more time. This is complicated for me. So what you were saying is that the problem started when UNIP started moving towards liberalization. That's not the way I...
No, the problem started in colonialism. And even after independence, we did not change the colonial economy. Whether we nationalize or privatize, it is the same colonial economy that still exists, that is dependent, that is disarticulated, and that is underdeveloping and neglecting the majority of our people. That is the structure of this economy. It remains so. It was so under colonialism, it was so after independence. And now the new generation, you, Elias and company, you should be the leaders of that generation. You must now relook at the whole roots.
I just need to make it
bring about a revolutionary change.
I really appreciate you saying that I belong to the new generation, because there are so many people who say that.
Because I saw how you peppered when somebody said they were alive in 1972.
But you see, these people, they call me they think that I'm your age mate, Prince Aka.
No, you made it quite clear. You made it quite clear that you must pick up your responsibility together with your generation. You must lead the new generation, but you must lead them in radical change, which addresses the colonial economy and turns it upside down. The investments that we need are our own people investing on their land. We don't want to tell people that for you to develop, you have to leave your village. For you to develop, you have to sell your land. For you to develop, you have to go and find a job. For you to develop, you have to wait for foreign investors. Those are the colonial mentalities that we have to overcome.
Is there any country in the world that models itself around what the principles that you have said?
Those countries you think are developed, that is their attitude. When they let's start this economy itself. That see, between 1945 to 1948, the departing colonial forces in the world came up with a new economic order, anchored on the World Bank and the IMF, founded in 1944. Anchored on it was, I think, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which has now become WTO. So those institutions are the secretariat of imperialism, the secretariat of a new colonialism, which Nkrumah called neo-colonialism. They are the secretariat of the globalization, which we think that our duty is simply to join it, to accommodate ourselves to it, even though it was not designed for us, it was not designed by us, and it never works in our favor. But if you look at the same America, they talk about free market economy. They talk about open trade. They did that before 1930. When they reached the 1930s and their stock market collapsed and depression came in, they brought in Keynesian economics, and that Keynesian economics recognized that competition is not equal, that there's no such thing as free market, that the market has to be managed, has to be regulated, and the same principle I'm telling you was the FDR's economy, that they started saying, in order to develop the American economy, which had collapsed in the 30s, you have to go to those rural areas and find whether they are digging ditches, whatever, you have to give them jobs there where they are in order to create jobs, their jobs, so that then they protect their industry, isn't it? But they tell us not to protect ours. The Americans not only protect their own industry at home, they are prepared to bomb any place in the world to protect their economic interests.
So you are West.
And then they tell you that don't protect your local industry. They cheat you and teach your children master's degrees and so on in economics about the mythology of a free market when they are busy manipulating. Then these secretariat institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the WHO, have one characteristic. They are dominated by them. In fact, they have a gentleman's agreement that whatever changes happens at the top of the World Bank.
All right. Now,
must be an American, and the IMF, the head must be a European.
But you yourself, you are Western educated economist. Yourself?
No, but I'm not uncritically Western educated. I'm not uncritically Western educated. In fact, there used to be a joke in the 1960s that if you want a capitalist-minded person, send them to school in Russia. Then when that code hits them, they'll become capitalists. If you want an anti-capitalism, send him to America. Like me, I went to school in Mississippi in the 60s. I went to Cornell University. I went to Carleton University.
Here
so
in
I have been in the bosom of the beast.
All right. Now,
so I do know that I separate between American propaganda and the American realities, because I've seen it. If you listen to Martin Luther King, it's not just I have a dream. When he died, by the way, I even saw him a few days before he died, because he came to Jackson, Mississippi. He was mobilizing us to join the demonstration in Memphis. It was a poor people's message. In other words, it was an economic agenda that beyond civil rights, beyond political rights, we had to have an economy which is inclusive and which is equal.
All right. Now, which then means going forward.
So don't. In other words, if you are sent, my message to young people, if you are sent to America for education, by all means go there, but don't go there empty-headed, and don't swallow that propaganda without being critical. And you must come back home and look at the concrete situation of our people. I retired in 2013. Where I live, my houses, I can look at villages on the plain. They are poorer than they were in 1960. Poorer physically, but also the people themselves are poorer mentally, because we have destroyed their sense of dignity, their sense of self-reliance, their capacity to be able to use the land and natural resources, because we have told them that the brightest among you must leave the village.
All right. We're going to change, we're going to switch it up a little bit now. You are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and so we can't do justice in the few minutes that we have. However, there is one court case that I believe is one of the most important court cases in the history of our country, and it is named after you. So, of course, in law, we name cases after people. So it's known as the Lewanika and others, and Chiluba.
Yes.
I want to get a little background of that case. So for those that are listening to us, it's known as Lewanika and others and Chiluba. Where did you get Mr. Chalalakafupi? Where did you get him from?
We actually took him from his village. But let me say that since the time that basically there are 5 constitutional cases which are important in the transition from the one-party state. The first one is that, of course, the whole independence struggle, the fruits of that independence struggle can be reduced to the independence constitution.
Okay.
Now, all the things they were arguing about were settled, were supposed to be settled in the independence constitution, which then was the foundation of the independent Zambia. So that when we were transforming from the one-party state, unfortunately, we conceded to only change one article in that constitution, Article 4, the one that allowed Zambians the freedom to form parties, and that facilitates multi-party elections.
Right.
That's the only thing that was changed. The rest of that constitution is the same as the one-party state, except that it has even been made worse, because the subsequent changes to the constitution actually reinforce the presidential powers, facilitate personalization of power, facilitate the seizure of the country and the state by a ruling party. Now, it means that even when you have multi-party election, you only have democracy during elections, if that. But once one of you parties have won, the party that has won completely replaces UNIP. Because the constitution, apart from the election facilitation, the constitution is one-party state. And that is by law. Now, if you add the mentality that we have not developed leaders who can lead by consensus, who can lead a team of equals, who can lead a team where there's contention of ideas. We've produced a leadership style where the leader is everything. The party is him. He's the financial manager. He's the philosopher king. He's the BO. If you don't want someone to be president, you send him a member of their party. If you yourself want to be president, Basop. Okay, so that is the first law. The other one, which is also very important, and I'll say this because I really think we must remember Judge Bobby Bwalia, that when we wanted to meet at what was then, what was it, Moon City, in the city, we were stopped on the grounds that we are not a registered society. Then the lawyers among us, Levy and company, prevailed on us to allow them to go and talk to the judge. We gave them time to go to the judge. And we were hoping that when they come back, we will then go back with our meeting. Unfortunately, when they came back, they said the judges told them that they should give them time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said that as officers of the court, it would be very bad if you make us break that promise we made, that we've given them time. So ultimately, the matter went to court. And the Bobby Bwalia judgment is very fundamental because it said that Zambians have a right to assemble and to consider public affairs, whether they are a registered society or not.
Okay, yeah.
And we have not utilized that. In other words, it actually contradicts this Public Order Act. In other words, there is a court judgment in favor of freedom of assembly, even for groups of citizens who are not a registered association.
No, that's
the third one is the one you mentioned, the Lewanika and others versus Chiluba.
So where did you take Kafupi from, Mr. Chavala Kafupi? Where did you take him from?
No, it was just part of the evidence. That is not even essential. I mean, we knew our leader's background very well. Okay, so we knew where his father was. In fact, when Masao Sopiri, God bless him, wherever he is, was sent by the post to investigate, he went to, what is that village by the Rapula River? Musangu. Before he reached the village, he found some villagers cultivating the field. He simply asked them that, can you take us to Mr. Chiluba's father? The villagers took them to Kafupi. So the whole village always knew that that is Mr. Chiluba's father. And they also knew why there was that dispute. I mean, we all now know it, and it's okay. Okay? But what was most important about that is that me, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I don't believe in any of these colonial boundaries. I don't believe that we should discriminate against Malawians, Tanganyikans, Congolese, Angolans. No, I don't believe in that. However, when in 1996, by that time, of course, I'd resigned from Mr. Chiluba's government. I was now even away from the ruling party backbenches. I was now in the opposition backbenches.
Yeah.
And we opposed that constitutional amendment, which was targeted to Dr. Kaunda. So some of us differed with the UNIP and one-party state on principle. We still thought that when we reintroduced multi-party democracy, we did not take anything away from UNIP members. The same rights we gained for non-UNIP members to be free to form or not form parties of their choice was also shared by those who had been UNIP. So that the human rights, the civil rights we are fighting for, we could not accept as a matter of principle that another African should be denied that. In fact, I still hold a record of speaking for 2 days in the Zambian parliament in opposition to that act. So apart from that, we then took the matter to court. Then unfortunately, because of the constitutional manipulation about when you can appeal, by the time you are allowed to appeal, somebody is already in State House. which is a continuing problem up to today. So that now, but we managed to make a case that the same charge Mr. Chiluba was making over Mr. Kaunda was also applied to him. To make it worse, President Kaunda's background is historically on record in detail. We know the exact year his father came to Mwenso from Livingstonia. We know the exact year he went to Chinsali. We know the years their children were born. We know the year the last born Keke was born. And in any case, his playmates were the Kapwepwes and the Sokonis and Makassars. So
and Alice Mulenga Lenshina. Please don't ignore Alice Mulenga Lenshina, Prophetess Lenshina. She was also
she was a friend of his sisters who were members of our church. So including his elder brother was also a member of that church. So that basically we tried to use a case against him to criticize the position he was taking against President Kaunda. So that was really the background of that. And the other significance of that judgment is in the details of the judgment itself.
Oh, yeah.
I think I shouldn't go into that area. But in the details of the judgment, they did not just address the issue we had taken. They took advantage under Judge Ngulube and company and Chilwa and the others. They took advantage of that case to state very elaborately how Zambian citizenship is gained. And it's so loose that anybody, even if you were at the time of independence, you were in Tanganyika. But your father had been working in Kitwe. And even if had you not gone to Tanganyika, if you had remained in Zambia, if you were entitled to be a Zambian, you could be a Zambian. So it is a very liberal situation that occurred. But the other important issue is that when we talk about citizenship, it is elaborated in that judgment very, very elaborately.
That's why for me that's one of the most significant constitutional cases in the history.
It is lifted. We normally say it's lifted from the first constitution of Zambia. In fact, it is lifted from the Zambia Independence Bill debated and passed by the British Parliament to open the door for Zambia to be independent. So that is the background. The other court case, which is also important, was the question of sitting MPs in a one-party state. Because as the mood for multi-party campaign, some of the MPs like Lumina, Benny Mwinga, and others were beginning to talk like they are opposition in a one-party state. So there was a move to kick them out of parliament. So there was a case which was judged in Livingstone. I don't know if it by Judge Mainga or somebody in Livingstone. And then that court case is also important because it said that members of parliament are free to debate and to vote how they want, even in a one-party state. The reason I'm saying this is important is that if that can be the case in a one-party state, what a shame that it can't be so in a multi-party state. That is the last court case was over. Mr. Chiluba was charged with uttering some words, treasonable words or insulting words. And that court case was judged in Choma. And in that court case, Levi Mwanawasa was the chairman of our league, was not able to do that. So it was one of the first cases, the Livingstone and that one, where we now recruited Malambo and Eric Sirwamba to go and represent us there. And that is their entry into mainstream MMD politics. So those are, I think, critical legal milestones, which we need to understand very clearly. because some of them, like the Bobby Bwalia judgment, the Mwinga and Lumina judgment, give us freedoms over which we have sat.
No,
we
no,
have allowed
I think we are exercising those freedoms, Honorable Aka. Yeah, Mr. Chipakupaku.
Can I come in?
Yes.
You, Prince, that 1973 was the beginning of the end of our economy because of the price of oil going up because of the war in the Middle East and the price of copper coming down. I also want to mention one thing. China was a communist country. I was in China in the 70s. China shifted from a communist country, and it's one of the richest countries now in the world because they have a mixed economy. That's why I've got big companies like the big company which is competing with Amazon, Jack Ma's company. So what you and I have discussed many times is that we cannot have an economy which is completely left or right. I personally believe.
To start with, yeah, but yes, okay. Let me just clarify that when you see, it is misleading to say the problem started in 1973. Huh? It's like saying the baby started being born on his birthday. You have to understand that there was conception. Huh?
So the baby, when did the baby start?
So that I'm saying that
the listeners are interested in what you just said.
Even when the economy was looking like it's healthy before 73, it was based on shaky grounds where we did not control the price of our export, we did not control the price of our import, and then we did not invest in industries that were linked to self-reliance livelihood of a majority of our people. So what the change of prices, yes, it was the Middle East war, but also the fact that the Middle Eastern did what we should do as Africans with our resources. They seized control of their resources and formed that oil cartel, OPEC, and started, which gave them the latitude to negotiate hard to increase the prices of their product. That is the lesson the whole of Africa must learn, that we must control our resources and we must determine the price of our resources. And then we must utilize the earnings from our resources to make sure that as much of those things we need to consume, which are possible to produce in Africa, are produced in Africa. And that is the investment now you can attract, which assists you to really have an economy you control. The Middle Eastern, as politics aside, they've managed to control their economy. And although they started with controlling resources that were finite, they ended up utilizing those resources to create the Dubais in the desert.
All right.
So
now,
that in the future, they may not even need oil.
Okay, thank you. Now, in August, tomorrow, or is it the next day, in about 2 days, Parliament is dissolving. No. Parliament is dissolving. And we have elections in August. Honorable Aka, do you wish to advise how Zambians should vote? Now, I don't want to be complicated here. We only have
my concern, you see, the right to vote was won with independence. So the Zambians are free to vote. And what we have to insist is that they must vote in an atmosphere which is free and fair and open, with no violence, no intimidation, no corruption. That's what we want. I don't care how they vote, as long as they are free to do that. But what concerns me is not August 12th. Nothing will happen between now and August 12th to face these fundamental economic issues, these fundamental constitutional issues, because the 12th August It's just a contest of who becomes a councillor, who becomes an MMD, who becomes an MP, who becomes a minister, who becomes president, under the same faulty system. I'm still looking for a political party.
We are still going to elections, nevertheless. We are going to elections. So, what is your advice to the people of Zambia?
It's not the first election. We had the election in 64, 68, 72. So we will have other elections. No groundwork has been made to ensure that the results of these elections bring in a leadership which is really committed to radically changing the constitutional regime and radically changing the economic regime. They are all basically status quo managers. They are good managers, bad managers. Some managers are thieves, maybe you don't want them. Some managers are good, but they are managing the same system. As long as they are managing the same system, depending on foreign investors who are free to come and invest where they want, who are licensed to buy land from our poor people and create a future of landlessness of our people, then we are still in the same pit.
In August, there are three main political parties competing. Obviously, there is a party that resonates to what you are saying. I'm not saying that, so just tell us.
Obviously. Where is the obviousness?
Yeah, no, let me do this. Let me do this. I know that's a very difficult question for Aka. Honorable Aka, there has been a very big debate that one person privatized the Zambian assets between 1995 and up to 2000. Is that true, that one person privatized the national assets?
No, I resigned over my protest against privatization. And I resigned in protest against the government of which I was a minister, not against anybody who was outside that government. You see, all those things are part of the things that concern me. That we bring up issues, we face issues, we waste our time, our words, our thinking over frivolous things. And we do not recast our mind to the root causes of our constitutional crisis, to the root causes of this dependent and underdeveloping economy. It may have seasons when the price is good, and then you look well, this and this figure goes well. In other words, you could even lower inflation. But if I'm a villager in the Barossa Plain, yes, of course, if inflation goes up, I suffer. But you see, I'm really not a participant in that economy. I'm just a victim. At whatever exchange rates, I'm poor. So that is the real challenge, is that this is why I'm focusing on Elias as the oldest among the generation I'll call new generation. That really, please change your mindset. Stop being misguided by discussing and focusing on frivolous things that change nothing fundamental. Focus your mind to the fundamental problems, and these fundamental problems cannot be allocated to be problems started by one person. No, they can't.
Okay. We have elections in August. Where are you
whether by our silence or dancing and singing, we supported this guy or that guy. Basically, we did not challenge the fundamental problems of our country.
Okay. So we challenge through elections. Where are you leaning? What guidance are you giving to the people of Zambia? No guidance? No?
No, the only guidance I'm giving is as a Democrat. That people should vote, should not allow to have their vote. They should not allow to vote because they've been intimidated. And those that want to buy people should stop it. Those that want to corrupt the electoral system should stop it. those that want to introduce violence should stop it. So my advice is to all the political actors, not only in Zambia, in Africa from Cape to Cairo. That is the advice. Not only in 2021, even in 1990, even in 2031. That is fundamental.
Now, State House watches us. If not the president, then someone, they watch us. What advice would you have for them?
That is my advice to all of them, which does not exclude them.
Can you repeat the advice, Honorable Aka?
Okay, my advice is to all political actors. In this case, particularly in Zambia, but not only in Zambia, that what is important is the integrity of the vote. The voters should not allow themselves to sell their vote. The voters should not allow themselves to make a decision to vote because they've been intimidated.
Right.
The vote buyers should not buy votes. The intimidators should not intimidate. The agents of violence should not be there. The agents of corruption should not be there. So that you can have free, fair, and open elections. That is my advice to everybody.
To everybody, that's too general. Again, we don't want those general things.
No.
So what advice do you have then?
Like your parent, I don't know. It's like if you have two children, you tell them to behave, then one of them says, no, be specific. Is it John you want to behave? I want all of you to behave.
So is that the advice to Mr. Hichilema?
Is Hichilema not part of these voters and political actors?
Okay. All right. So President,
see, the other criticism, the other advice I would have is to you, Elias.
Yes.
And all the media people, which is that I charge you with promoting riffraffs into leadership by paying too much attention to them. You are the ones who's creating riffraffs into media superstars so that our people, when they want to decide to vote, the only faces they've been seeing in the media are riffraffs. So the media must be able to decide what character of leadership do you want? You see, you want leaders who are clean and who are not corrupt.
Do we have that media? Do we have that media?
Pardon?
Do we have that media? Do we have that media in Zambia? You knew the one-party media. You knew the multi-party media.
Elias has a media under his control, and others have media. You know, this is a modern age. Nobody is waiting that if you don't hear from ZNBC, then you hear nothing. No, the technology has bypassed that.
Yeah.
But you see, it's not simply a media decision. It's also the society. Which people excite us? Thieves driving Mercedes excite you. You are part of the problem.
Okay.
Huh?
No,
people who talk rubbish, who are inconsistent, who are somersaulting, you continue listening to them, you continue giving them platform. So, of course, the poor voter,
like which
you
one?
ask them, who are you voting for?
Riffraff. No.
No, that's not. I'm not interested in that. Because Zambia does not only have one thief. Huh? So even if I give you 10 names of thieves, I'm not solving your problem. The message is that we are against stealing by anybody. And I urge the media to start promoting people who they themselves decide are really the characters they want promoted. They should not think that you can bring somebody on your TV interview without promoting. You know, politicians have always said that any publicity is good publicity. So even if you castigate him with his face all over the place, you are giving the publicity he needs, and some of the people just have seen his face, would know his name, and not know the names and the faces of decent majority of people who may be available to provide leadership.
Thank you. That advice is well taken by me and Mr. Chipakupaku. Mwaumva ba Chipakupaku.
Can I also bring?
But I should also make it clear that there is not.
Go ahead.
Yes?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, sir.
Yes.
No, you ask.
I was saying,
make your statement.
I was saying that.
No, you are making your statement.
I was
going to say that. Yes.
There is a little feedback. Go ahead, Honorable Aka. Please go ahead.
You are cutting.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Honorable Aka. Go ahead.
Okay, basically what I was saying is that I don't want to be misunderstood. There is nothing wrong, and every Zambian has every right to be partisan and to exercise his freedom to choose the party of his choice. But even in your partisanship, you must be nationalistic.
Okay.
Even in your partisanship, you must be nationalistic. And you must also give the rights of others who may not be in your party the same rights that you need, so that we really reinforce, or in fact recreate, the democratic dispensation we've been fighting for since independence. This is the dispensation we promised at independence, that the white people are denying us a vote. In fact, the first slogan, let me say that I've said this, I say this often, but I can't say it often enough, that at the founding of the Northern Rhodesia African Congress in 1948, there had two slogans. One was the generic slogan for all the congresses in Southern Africa: one man, one vote. They were not gender sensitive. One man, one person, one vote.
Yeah.
The second one was leadership through team spirit. Now, since independence, even since before independence, we began to introduce intimidation and violence, which undermine the freedom of people to vote. This precious vote for which people died, for Africans to be able to have a vote. We started debasing it. After independence and now, you introduce corruption, you introduce violence, which means that that vote becomes worthless. This is why I was saying my advice is that please don't sell your vote and don't give your vote because you've been intimidated. Then the other aspect, which maybe is a discussion for another day, is the leadership style. The leadership style from the founders of the Congress movement had the second slogan: leadership through teamwork. In other words, collective leadership, servant leadership, leadership which is composed of a team of people, of equals, who can contribute their individuality to a collective good. Since independence, we have gradually lost that. Part of the loss is through the constitutional transformation we have made, which has led to personalization of political leadership, personalization of the state, licensing a ruling party to capture the state. And that has destroyed the heritage of leadership characterized by teamwork, which was part of the founding. I know most Zambians have been told that the founding fathers are those who took leadership in 1960. But those who brought leadership in the 40s, 30s, 20s believed in team leadership.
Yeah, they did.
And I think we need to recapture that.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you. I think we'll bring you back because you are such a great source of wisdom and stability. I can see so many comments and people are saying that they like the way you answer questions. I think you are the lawyer here. So keep it up. We'll bring you back sometime. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, we want to give you an opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Yes, what did you say?
I'm saying the gratitude is mine. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I'm actually very desperate to give whatever knowledge, information that I have, because I think it's part of the legacy that we need to leave behind. And I'm worried that not enough knowledge in our society.
About those books, are you planning to republish them? Because honestly, I think there was a good age of writing among your generation, and we really appreciate that. But it appears like the books are lost.
Yes.
Where can we get them?
No, well, you know, we don't have a publishing industry. You see, if we had a publishing industry, then the researchers, their job is to do research and write, then you hand it over to people's business, is to do the proofreading, the publishing, and so on. We don't have that. And part of the reason we don't have that is that we don't have sufficient reading culture. Part of the reason we don't have sufficient reading culture is that even if you are talking rubbish, people are still listening to you. Even if you are ignorant, you pass. You know, there isn't that critical thing. I'll tell you, some people sometimes ask me that, how come I know so much about Africa, the whole of Africa? It's because when I went to Mississippi, it was in the late 60s. And there was the Black Power, and people were interested in Africa and this, Africa, that. So they took me that since I was the African, I would be like a resident resource, that if they're arguing, they'll call me. And sometimes they're arguing over Tunisia. So I had to learn about Tunisia. I was being invited to churches to talk about African religion. And of course, I'm from Musakile, there's no African religion there. So I had to go. Fortunately, I went into the library and found Professor.
So you're from
African religion. So yes. I quickly read it, and the little I understood seemed to have made a good impression. So I ended up having to really learn a lot about Africa. Unfortunately, the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the Black Radical Power movement was really a knowledge movement. Huh? If you listen to Martin Luther King's speeches, he's quoting, you listen to Stokely Carmichael's speeches, they are quoting Kamau's from Algeria, they are quoting Frantz Fanon. So reading became part of our politics, including student politics. So that when you are supporting the Southern African Liberation Movement, it means I had to know about Cabral in Guinea-Bissau, I had to know about Dos Santos, the other Dos Santos in Mozambique, Machel, and so on. So that is basically what I hope that our young people will find interest in seeking knowledge and reading critically. And so that when they go to a bar, when we were young, when even at a dance party, you have a birthday party, there were political debates, there were philosophical debates. People even brought books. Like one of the books that influenced most is Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. People of Frantz Fanon, for instance, by Walter Rodney. And of course, at Cornell, we used to invite them to come, and I've met them. So that, you see, even when we were partying, the discussions there, we'll be discussing campaigning for Angela Davis to be released, campaigning for the anti-Vietnam War, which means we had to learn about the history of East Asia.
Right. So, thank you. I think we are going to bring you back, Honorable Aka. Thank you so much for joining us in 1 hour, 30 minutes already.
Okay.
And then it felt like just 1 minute. So thank you so much. We are going to bring you back.
Thank you so much. So the pleasure and honor was mine, and thank you for the opportunity to share.
Please say hello to our people in Mongo.
Okay, we'll certainly say that.
I have three children. Three, Muitumwa, Tebuho, and Pumulo. Three of them, very wonderful children.
You know the meanings of those. One of my grandmother's ancestors, her grandfather was Muitumwa.
Right. So we are bringing them high, and I don't know when, but we'll bring them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Honorable Aka. For me, I just missed the last time we met at your home and talking about all these things for days and days and nights and nights. And what I will always remember is your big library in the house. Which
yes,
I
and let me take this opportunity to young people to come to visit me, but to look at all the resources.
Yeah.
I have the whole record of the African Representative Council from 1941 to 59, all their debates. If you want to know who the founders of Zambia are, you can just go on the opening pages of each one of those, you find them, and all sorts of documents there, all sorts of books. And of course, we welcome any donation.
That's in Mungu. That's in his house in Mungu.
Yes.
I had the privilege to be with him for a number of days in Mungu. That is a resource, Honorable Aka, which you should keep for Zambia.
Thank you.
Well, let Zambia come to it. The door is open.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. I know this is very late there in Chiwempala and in Huzakile, where our guest grew up, because he is from Kopala. Who knew? Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, somebody was asking me whether I'm a fan of Nkana United. I said, no, I'm not a fan. I am Nkana United.
Of course. We know you.
I'm not from the Copper Belt, I'm Copper Belt.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Chipakupaku, we'll see you sometime very soon.
Thank you so much for a fantastic day and lovely.
I know we have to chat a little bit. Don't go. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. This has been Elias Munshya and Mr. Norman Chipakupaku and Honorable Akashambatwa Mbikusita-Lewanika. Please, if you are able, find the opportunity to send TV Bakwe to some stars. You buy stars from Facebook, and then it's like you are paying. You are paying to be part of this great programming, and we are going to come back again someday. We don't know when, but please stay tuned because we have very exciting programs for you coming later. Okay, so send us stars. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night. Mongu, Barotseland, Sesheke, Kasempa, Mwinilunga, Ikelengi, Milenge, Chiwempala, Naguchpata. Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you, and God bless our country.